Long Forever is a split album between Swedish stoner rock band Lowrider and British psychedelic doom metal band Elephant Tree. This is a full 12-inch album. It's got a full side for each band, and each contributes a pretty substantial mark here in terms of where they're at with their music right now. This album has more of a serious tone to it. I think between the very strong melodic guidance of a band like Lowrider, who'd been around since the late 90s, and the harsher kind of electric wizard tinged side of Elephant Tree, who've kind of been on like a looser psychedelic kick for their last album or two. They meld together in interesting ways here, where they show how they're very different, and they also show how similar they are in terms of some of their core influences. There's something a little bit Sabbath about what Elephant Tree does. There's something a lot more classic, like 90s stoner rock about Lowrider. I think if you're not familiar with Lowrider, knowing Ode to Io, their 2000 debut, is pretty important in terms of their spot and their like very temporary station in stoner rock when it was really coming up in Scandinavia and Sweden, and they were just kind of a band who got there with that kind of hiss and that stoner sound earlier on. I have a long history with the band. I'm a big fan of theirs, so everything they do I'm gonna like. I think their second record on for their comeback record in 2020, Refractions, was one of the best records put out that year, and I think they're just uniquely catchy, they're accessible, they're kind of emotionally lit, but they're also kind of a desert rock feeling band. There's something I just like about that. It's very classic to me, but the production values have a little bit of grit and a little bit of that hi-fi stoner sound that I tend to like. So we'll cut to a song of theirs right now, just to get a sense for just how great they sound on this record, and I'll kind of talk about Elephant Tree after that, and what how the theme of this split record and their work is a return for them. So you don't need in-depth notes from me on Lowrider. Basically, everything they do is pretty untouchable. They're a pretty solid band, just a great across the board. I'm less familiar with Elephant Tree. These guys have been around about as long as Lowrider have been back, since about 2013. They put out about a couple of records now, and I'm not that familiar with them. I've never reviewed anything of theirs, and the last time they put out a record was before I'd started the site. So I just kind of had to go through their discography and rediscover what they've done in the past. And so far, I've enjoyed their sound. There's sort of a stony, Sabbath-esque touch to it. It's certainly stoner music in general, but there's a drift. There was something very hi-fi and rich and certainly psychedelic in their instrumentals on their previous record. Now, on this album, they've scaled back to something that is darker. It is very simple. It's kind of plug in and play, and that means it's just kind of raw and dark and develops a psychedelic doom metal sound, which is fairly unique, but not really. It doesn't really do too much to stand out. It's dreary, it's droning, it's emotionally driven, and basically it's, I think, intentionally so, because they're kind of coming back from one of the main members having been in an accident and basically relearning how to engage with music again after a traumatic incident. And so that's kind of what the title of the album, The Long Forever, means. It's kind of a fever dream during kind of the pandemic era, and a lot of things going on feeding into the theme of it. It's an interesting thing. I don't think that the band have completely sold, like, if I had only heard Elephant Tree's side, I wouldn't have been sold on it, but in context of how much change this brings to their discography, it's pretty interesting, and I like that direction they're going in. I think I would like something a little bit more produced, or at least just louder in general. It's kind of a quiet recording, but of course I already had the stereo cranked up listening to Lowrider. It kind of balances out. There's a very high and a very low mood on this album, and it makes for a great listening experience. For me, I look for a very specific sound when I'm going to delve into stoner rock and stoner metal, and how that usually touches upon doom metal is where I'm interested. I think all those bases are kind of touched upon here, and it makes for a record that I really enjoyed sitting with. with. It was just a pleasure listen to. Plenty of catchier songs, some heavier stuff on there too, and in general, just something I enjoyed quite a bit. So check that out for yourself. That released today on October 25th, and read my review for more in depth just thoughts on each band and their contributions to this split.